The sun was dipping behind the houses of Maplewood Street, casting a warm golden glow over the Thompson home. Emily Thompson sat on the front porch, her hands wrapped around a cup of chamomile tea, watching the world slow down for the evening. She had always loved these quiet moments after a long day, but today her mind felt heavy. The car had broken down again, leaving her stranded at the grocery store earlier in the day and forcing her to call a tow service she couldn't really afford. She had tried contacting her husband, Mark, but he was swamped with late work at the office, his voice over the phone distracted. Tired, Emily sighed and looked at the car sitting forlornly in the driveway, its engine still making the faintest rattle from the morning. It had been a week of small frustrations stacking up household bills, errands, and the constant balancing act of running the home. She felt the weight of it pressing down on her chest, a dull ache she hadn't felt in a while. And then there was Ethan, her stepson. Ethan was 19, tall, lean, and quiet most of the time, with a surprising confidence that sometimes caught her off guard. Since his mother passed away 2 years ago, Emily had grown close to him, but their relationship had always been respectful and gently distant, like a bridge being built slowly, piece by piece. He had lived with them since then, and though he was like a son in many ways, he was also his own person, independent and self-assured. That evening, Ethan had finished his homework and was sitting in the living room, headphones on, half listening to music while scrolling through his phone. He noticed Emily's glances toward the driveway and saw her sigh deeply. Curious, he finally approached the porch. "You okay, Mom?" he asked, using the nickname she encouraged him to call her. Emily tried to smile. "It's just... the car broke down again. I'm tired of dealing with all this alone." Ethan looked toward the vehicle, and a thought sparked in his mind. "I think I can fix it," he said suddenly, his voice calm but confident. Emily blinked. "You can." He nodded. "I've been watching tutorials, reading guides. I know the basics. If you let me try, I can at least figure out what's wrong." Emily hesitated. She knew Ethan was handy. He had always enjoyed tinkering with bikes and helping his friends with small mechanical problems. But this was a full-sized car. Real engine, not something from YouTube. "Are you sure it's safe?" she asked, worry lacing her tone. "I promise I'll be careful," Ethan said, his green eyes steady. "If I can't fix it, I'll know exactly what the problem is, and we can call a professional." There was something in his voice that made Emily feel a flutter of pride. Maybe it was the determination, the responsibility he was showing, or simply the kindness behind his offer. She nodded finally. "Okay. Just be careful, Ethan." He grinned a small, easy smile and got to work immediately. Rolling up his sleeves, he opened the hood and started inspecting the engine with careful precision. Emily sat on the porch watching him quietly. She could see the focus on his face, the way his hands moved confidently but gently over the machinery, and she felt a surge of admiration. Time seemed to stretch and compress at once. She brewed another cup of tea and took small sips, stealing glances at Ethan as he worked. She noticed the subtle details, the way he wiped sweat from his forehead, how he adjusted the flashlight to see a hidden part of the engine. The patient way he tried a few different approaches until he found the one that worked. Every move was careful, precise, deliberate. After some time, Ethan straightened up, brushing his hands on a rag. "I think I found it," he said. Emily rushed to the driveway, curious and a little anxious. He pointed to a corroded, worn part deep inside the engine. "This is what's causing the problem. I can temporarily fix it until we get a replacement. Should work fine for now." Emily felt a mixture of relief and admiration. "Ethan, that's amazing," she said, genuinely impressed. He shrugged modestly. "I just wanted to help. I know how much this car means to you, and I hate seeing you stressed." Emily felt warmth spread in her chest, a feeling that went beyond simple gratitude. It wasn't romantic in a forbidden sense. It was a kind of deep appreciation and affection that grows from shared trust and care. Ethan was thoughtful, attentive, and genuinely concerned about her well-being, But he wasn't done. After fixing the part, Ethan didn't just leave the engine as it was. He cleaned the entire compartment, wiped the oil stains, and polished the tires. Then, for good measure, he left a small note on the windshield. All fixed for now. Drive safely. Ethan and Emily couldn't stop herself from laughing softly in astonishment. You did all this? Without being asked, she said. Ethan shrugged again, his calm demeanor masking a quiet satisfaction. I thought it would be helpful, he said simply. As Emily watched him, she realized something. This moment wasn't just about a car being fixed. It was about seeing Ethan take initiative, show care, and express himself in a way that words alone could not. He had thought of her comfort and safety without being prompted. The light in the driveway began to fade, and the soft evening shadows fell over the car. Emily took a deep breath, marveling at the young man who had grown in ways she hadn't fully noticed until now. It wasn't just mechanical skill, though. That impressed her was thoughtfulness, patience, and empathy. He was someone who understood her in subtle ways. Ethan called out to her after a moment. Want me to test it? I can drive it around the block to make sure it's running smoothly. Emily hesitated. Do you really need to? She asked, protective instincts kicking in. I want to, he said, smiling gently. I want to make sure it's safe for you. Reluctantly, Emily nodded. She watched as Ethan climbed into the driver's seat, the young man who had once been just a shy teenager, now confident and capable. The engine roared to life smoothly under his hands, and he drove carefully around the quiet block, checking every turn, every brake, and every gear shift. When he returned, Emily felt a swell of pride and emotion. Ethan had not only fixed the car, he had tested it, polished it, and ensured her safety. He handed her the keys with a small, respectful smile. I did this for you, he said simply. Emily's chest tightened. She felt a surge of gratitude, a sense of family, and an almost indescribable emotional connection. This was a step beyond ordinary appreciation. It was a bond reinforced by trust, care, and a shared experience. Then Ethan did something that caught her completely off guard. From his backpack, he pulled out a small journal he had been keeping, filled with sketches, notes, and small plans inspired by conversations they had shared. He handed it to her. I thought you might like this, he said softly. Emily's eyes widened. You made this for me? She asked, touched by the gesture. He nodded. I wanted to show you how much I appreciate you. You've been like a second mother to me. Tears sprang to her eyes, and for a moment, Emily felt something profound. It was not a romantic feeling, but a deep, wholesome connection, care, respect, and admiration flowing between them. She realized that Ethan had grown into someone responsible, considerate, and emotionally aware. As the evening settled around them, Emily felt a quiet wonder. The broken car had become a symbol not of frustration, but of care, initiative, and connection. In fixing it, Ethan had shown her more about himself than words could convey. And Emily found herself smiling in awe at his thoughtfulness. And then, just when she thought the evening couldn't get any more memorable, Ethan said something that made her laugh and left her amazed. A small, unexpected gesture that hinted at the even deeper bond forming between them. It was a night that began with frustration and ended with connection, pride, and the gentle stirrings of emotion that come from witnessing someone you care about grow into their best self. And Emily knew this was only the beginning of a story she would remember for years. A story not about a car, but about trust, love, and the quiet surprises that life sometimes delivers when you least expect them. The next morning, Emily woke up to the sound of birds outside her window. The sunlight spilled across the room, filling it with warmth, but her mind was still on the previous evening. The car had been fixed. Ethan had gone out of his way to ensure everything was perfect. And he had even given her that little journal filled with sketches and thoughtful notes. She hadn't stopped thinking about it all night, replaying every detail in her mind. It wasn't romantic in the traditional sense, but there was something quietly thrilling about the connection they shared. A bond built on care, understanding, and trust. She went downstairs to make breakfast, hoping Ethan might join her. He was already in the kitchen, casually flipping pancakes and humming a tune she didn't recognize. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that made her heart flutter in a warm, comfortable way. "Good morning," he said, placing a plate of pancakes on the counter. "Thought you might want breakfast before work?" Emily laughed softly, shaking her head in disbelief. "You're really going out of your way, aren't you?" she asked, taking a seat at the table. "I guess I am," Ethan admitted, leaning against the counter. "I wanted to make things easier for you. You've been stressed with the car and everything else. I thought I could help start your day off right." As they ate, Emily couldn't help but notice the thoughtfulness in every gesture, how he poured her coffee exactly the way she liked it, how he asked about her day in advance as if he knew it would be busy. There was a gentle ease between them now, a kind of familiarity that was growing steadily, unforced and natural. It was the kind of closeness she had always wanted in her home, but never realized could come from a stepson, someone who had once felt like a stranger after breakfast. Emily headed out for errands while Ethan stayed behind to tidy the kitchen. As she drove away in the now smoothly running car, she thought about how much easier life felt with someone so reliable and considerate around. There was an emotional warmth in her heart that hadn't been there before, a sense that she wasn't just being cared for, but truly understood. And even though it was a quiet, almost invisible connection, it was powerful in its own way. By mid-morning, Emily returned home to find Ethan in the garage again, this time working on a small woodworking project he had been talking about for weeks. He looked up when she entered. "Hey, I thought I'd try fixing the old bookshelf in the living room," he said, wiping his hands. "It's been a bit wobbly, and I think I can make it sturdy again." Emily watched as he moved around the garage, measuring, sanding, and carefully adjusting the planks of wood. His attention to detail was impressive. Each movement was precise, deliberate, but there was also a creative spark in the way he imagined the finished piece. Emily felt a swell of admiration, a sense of pride in seeing him grow into such a thoughtful, capable young man. "Do you need any help?" she asked, moving closer to watch him work. Ethan shook his head. "No, I've got it," he said, smiling softly. "But thanks for offering." She smiled back, a little flutter of emotion settling in her chest. There was something soothing about being near him, about witnessing his quiet competence and care. He wasn't just fixing things, he was improving them, making life smoother and more beautiful for everyone around him, especially her. It was a subtle form of intimacy, one that didn't need words, gestures, or declarations. It was simply present. As the day went on, Emily found herself drawn to Ethan more and more. She noticed how he laughed when he made a small mistake, how he concentrated when he was solving a problem, and how he always made her feel included without ever demanding attention. He was respectful yet confident, independent yet connected. He carried himself with a maturity that was rare for someone his age, and it made Emily feel both proud and deeply touched. Later in the afternoon, Emily needed help carrying groceries from the car. Ethan appeared as if on cue, lifting bags effortlessly and placing them on the counter with care. "I figured you'd need a hand," he said, grinning, "and I wanted to spend a little more time with you." Emily laughed softly, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with romance, but everything to do with affection. "You really are full of surprises today," she said. Shaking her head in amusement, Ethan shrugged modestly. But there was a spark in his eyes that told her he enjoyed being helpful, being noticed, and being appreciated. There was a rhythm to their interactions now, a gentle push and pull of care and attention, each learning more about the other through small, meaningful gestures. As evening approached, the two of them settled in the living room. Emily sipped tea while Ethan read aloud from one of her favorite novels, his voice calm, confident, and soothing. She felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time, a rare comfort in the presence of someone she cared about deeply. The conversation turned to dreams and plans. Ethan shared his ideas for college, for travel, and for projects he wanted to pursue. Emily listened, fascinated not just by his ambitions, but by the thoughtfulness behind them. He wasn't reckless or impulsive. He had thought things through, considered consequences. and even considered how his actions affected the people around him. "And what about you, Emily?" he asked suddenly, looking at her with genuine curiosity. "What are your dreams these days? What do you hope for?" Emily hesitated, touched by the question. She realized that she had been so focused on daily routines and responsibilities that she hadn't taken the time to consider her own aspirations. I think I want more balance," she said finally. "Time for myself, for my passions, for moments that bring me joy." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "I can help with that," he said simply. "I want you to have time for yourself, too. You deserve it." His words weren't just comforting, they were affirming a recognition of her needs and emotions. Emily felt a surge of gratitude and something more profound. A sense of being seen and understood in a way she hadn't expected. The bond between them was deepening, built on trust, care, and emotional awareness. As night fell, Emily and Ethan moved outside to the porch. The stars were just beginning to appear and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. They sat side by side, talking about nothing and everything, the conversation flowing easily, naturally. Emily realized she had never felt this level of connection with anyone in a long time. It wasn't romantic in a forbidden or inappropriate way, but it was intimate in its own gentle, mature sense of closeness born of shared experiences, trust, and mutual respect. Then Ethan surprised her again. He handed her a small sketch he had drawn that afternoon, a simple pencil illustration of the house, the porch, and the car they had fixed together. On the bottom, he had written a note, "For the person who makes this house a home." Emily's chest tightened. She took the sketch in her hands, feeling a mixture of warmth, affection, and pride. It wasn't just a drawing, it was a symbol of attention, care, and thoughtfulness. And in that moment, she realized that their relationship had shifted subtly but significantly. It was no longer just about family obligations or shared living space. It was about appreciation, understanding, and emotional closeness. Ethan watched her with a quiet smile, sensing her reaction. "I wanted to show you that I notice all the little things you do," he said softly. Emily blinked back tears, her heart full. "You notice? And you care?" she whispered. "Thank you, Ethan. This means a lot." They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, the night sky stretching above them. The car, once broken and frustrating, had become a bridge for connection, a symbol of care, effort, and understanding. Emily realized that small, thoughtful actions could create profound emotional bonds, and Ethan had demonstrated that in ways she hadn't fully anticipated. As the evening deepened, Emily felt a gentle flutter of excitement, not romantic in a forbidden sense, but emotional, heartfelt, and mature. There was a thrill in witnessing growth, kindness, and genuine connection. It wasn't about what others would think. It was about the emotional resonance of shared care and attention. And then, just as she was preparing to head inside, Ethan turned to her with a playful grin. "Tomorrow, I was thinking we could work on the garden. I have a few ideas to make it look nicer." Emily laughed, shaking her head in amazement. "You really don't stop, do you?" He just smiled, his eyes bright with intention. "I like helping. I like making things better. And I like spending time with you." Emily felt her heart swell with affection, a warm, safe, and inspiring feeling. It wasn't about romance, it was about connection, care, and emotional intimacy. But it was also undeniable that their bond had grown stronger than either had expected. It was a mix of admiration, respect, trust, and the quiet thrill of being seen and understood. That as she went inside, Emily realized one important thing. Life could be full of surprises, and the most meaningful moments often came from small acts of care and attention. Ethan had shown her that in ways she would never forget, and as she drifted off to sleep that night, she couldn't help but wonder what other surprises lay ahead in this quietly extraordinary relationship. The next moments, the next shared experiences, the next ways in which life could unfold beautifully, unexpectedly, and memorably. The next morning, Emily woke with a sense of anticipation she couldn't quite explain. After the emotional closeness she had felt with Ethan yesterday, she wondered what today might bring. The house felt alive in a new way. as if their small routines and shared efforts were slowly transforming it into something warmer, more welcoming. The car had been repaired, the living room bookshelf stabilized, and the porch sketch hung in the corner of her mind like a symbol of care. She had a quiet smile on her face as she made breakfast, the aroma of coffee mixing with the sun streaming through the windows. Ethan entered shortly after, carrying a toolbox and a small packet of seeds for the garden he had mentioned. "Morning, Emily," he said with a grin. "Ready to turn the backyard into something amazing?" She laughed softly. "You're full of energy today," she said, trying not to sound too tired despite the excitement in her chest. "I figure we have a lot to do," Ethan replied, setting down his tools. "And it's more fun when we work together." As they stepped into the backyard, Emily felt a thrill at the thought of creating something beautiful alongside him. Ethan had a way of seeing potential where she had only seen clutter, and his energy was contagious. They began clearing the weeds, preparing the soil, and planting the seeds. Each small task became a shared accomplishment, a testament to teamwork, trust, and subtle emotional intimacy. Emily noticed the care in the way Ethan handled each plant, the focus in his movements, and the quiet satisfaction in his eyes whenever they completed a section of the garden while planting. They talked about their dreams and goals, laughing at small memories and sharing personal stories. Ethan revealed a side of himself that Emily hadn't fully seen before, his thoughtful reflections on life, the hopes he had for his future, and the ways he wanted to make a difference in the world. She listened intently, inspired and moved by his maturity, and realized that their relationship had grown into something more than family obligations or casual companionship. It was trust, mutual respect, and a shared sense of purpose. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Ethan paused to show her a small surprise he had prepared. "I thought the garden needed a little extra touch," he said, revealing a handmade bird feeder. Emily's eyes widened at the thoughtful gesture. He had carefully constructed it, painting it with bright colors and attaching a small note that read, "For moments of peace and joy." Emily felt a lump in her throat. "Ethan, this is wonderful," she said softly. "You really think of everything?" He shrugged modestly, though his smile betrayed pride. "I just want you to feel happy in this house. You've done so much for everyone else. I figured it was time to do something for you." The sincerity in his voice and the care in his actions touched her deeply. It wasn't just a garden or a bird feeder, it was an expression of attention, thoughtfulness, and a genuine desire to make life brighter for someone she cared about. She realized then that their bond had evolved into a relationship defined by trust, appreciation, and subtle emotional intimacy. There was no rush, no force, just a quiet, thrilling connection that made ordinary moments extraordinary. By late afternoon, they sat on the porch, surveying their handiwork. The garden was beginning to take shape, with the sun casting a golden glow over the freshly planted flowers and vegetables. Emily felt a sense of accomplishment and a warmth that came from shared effort and mutual support. Ethan's presence beside her was comforting, inspiring, and quietly thrilling, a mix of admiration, affection, an emotional connection that she hadn't expected but now deeply cherished. Suddenly, Ethan turned to her with a playful glint in his eye. "I have one more surprise," he said. "Follow me." Emily raised an eyebrow, intrigued and slightly anxious. She followed him to the garage, wondering what he could possibly have planned. When he opened the door, she saw a fully restored bicycle leaning against the wall. "I remembered you mentioned wanting to ride again," Ethan said. "I fixed it up and made sure it's perfect for you." Her heart leaped. She hadn't ridden in years, not since her life had become consumed by responsibilities and routines. The gesture was simple, yet profoundly thoughtful. It was another symbol of care, a reminder that small acts could hold enormous emotional weight. Emily felt a rush of gratitude and excitement as she tested the bike, feeling the wind on her face and a sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in a long time. Ethan watched her with a soft, proud smile. "You look happy?" he said quietly. "I am," she replied, laughing. "This is incredible. Thank you, Ethan. Truly." The day continued with lighthearted moments, shared laughter, and mutual appreciation. They tended to the garden, played with the newly fed birds, and reflected on the small accomplishments of the day. Emily realized that Ethan's thoughtfulness and dedication weren't just gestures, they were reflections of his character, his respect, and his genuine care for her as a person. It wasn't about romance in the traditional sense. It was emotional intimacy, trust, and an extraordinary sense of connection that made ordinary moments magical. As evening approached, the two of them returned to the porch, sitting side by side. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers from the garden. Emily felt a deep sense of calm and happiness, knowing that her home had become a place of shared joy, care, and connection. Ethan handed her a small envelope. "One last thing for today," he said. Emily opened it to find a heartfelt note. It read, "For all the times you make life brighter, for all the little things you do, and for simply being who you are. Thank you for letting me be a part of your world." Tears welled in her eyes. She looked at Ethan, moved beyond words. You didn't have to do this," she whispered. He shook his head gently. "I wanted to. You mean a lot to me, Emily. I care about you, and I hope you know that." The sincerity in his eyes and the depth of his words made her heart swell with emotion. This wasn't a fleeting thrill or a superficial gesture, it was a meaningful connection, built on care, thoughtfulness, and trust. Emily realized that life's most unforgettable moments often came from emotional bonds, small acts of kindness, and shared experiences that left lasting impressions. They spent the rest of the evening reflecting on their day, talking quietly about hopes, plans, and memories. Emily felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment, recognizing that their relationship had reached a place of mutual respect, appreciation, and deep emotional resonance. Ethan had shown her that connection could be built through understanding, support, and the quiet power of thoughtful actions. Finally, as night fell and stars appeared in the sky, Emily felt a rush of gratitude for the day, for the bond she had with Ethan, and for the small surprises that had made life feel brighter. She realized that while the gestures were a simpler fixed car, a repaired bookshelf, a thriving garden, a restored bicycle, they represented something far greater: attention, care, and emotional intimacy that could transform ordinary life into something extraordinary. Ethan stood beside her on the porch, their shoulders brushing lightly. "I think today went well," he said with a grin. Emily laughed softly, shaking her head. "You've outdone yourself." "I don't know how to thank you enough," he smiled, shrugging modestly. "Just keep being you. That's enough for me." As they watched the stars twinkle above, Emily felt a sense of completion and quiet exhilaration. Life had shifted in ways she hadn't anticipated, and it was because of the small, thoughtful, and meaningful actions of someone who genuinely cared. Ethan had not only helped with the car and the house, but had also touched her heart in ways words alone could not capture. And as Emily turned to go inside, she realized one simple truth: the strongest bonds aren't always declared with grand gestures or dramatic confessions. Sometimes they're built through shared experiences, acts of care, mutual respect, and the quiet thrill of being understood and appreciated. And she knew that in Ethan. She had found someone who brought not only help and support, but also an emotional depth that made life brighter, fuller, and unforgettable.